This video I'm going to show you how to open a pool, to pull the cover off, get the chemicals right, start cleaning it up, or you start vacuuming, getting rid of the algae and the kind of sediments inside of there. And I actually I had to delay this video a little bit because when I started to open it, everything was going good, and then I noticed some tiles coming off. So there's a link in the video, or there's a video description here for if you want to see that video. And then it turned out, I got everything okay, and then I saw water leaking, or I saw water wet, or that the ground was wet around the pool. And it turns out one of my pipes was broken underneath the ground. So there's another video if you want to see how to fix a pipe. But this again is just the opening the pool. So when I'm first opening it like this, that's just take a look at all the equipment just to see, look for any obvious cracks or any problems. Also identify everything that I'm going to need. So for example, look at the the cleaner and see if there's the filter cartridges are in there. Look for anything obvious. Take a look at the electrical, make sure everything's off as well, or test it out, make sure it works. So here I have the different pumps, the heater, and everything's off right now, just how it was during the winter. And so I'm going to take a look at, looking at the, this is the multi-port valve. It's in a winterized mode. It needs to be on filter. So, move that, or probably turn it around just a couple different places, just to make sure it works correctly. You can see the hinges that it drops into place. Really just before you start working on it, you want to make sure it all kind of, no obvious problems. So like I said, I'm just open up the filter here, see what's in there. So sometimes, especially if somebody else has closed it for you, you may be missing things. So see, this is missing all the filters, so I know where they are, but you may need to go locate that before you can actually open the pool. So you might want to do this a couple days before you actually want to do it, just so you know where everything is. So here I'm putting the filters in. These require DE, but I'm just reassembling them just to make sure everything's in place, everything works. It goes where I'm expecting it. I have all the pieces. So there's a piece that goes on the top, and there's a little filter that goes, or a cartridge that goes on the top. Usually go around and just look, make sure see what needs to be taken out. How everything is. This one has, I put these those green floats in there, not really floats, but they go in. And they keep the ice from cracking the inside. So that blocks off one of the ports, but there's also a rubber port in there. And then the next thing I like to go through is look at all the rubber washers first, make sure I have them for everything. So there's one that goes on the bottom of the filter. This one goes around the filter. This is the largest one you'll find, this rubber gasket. They're usually in the pumps. And then I go through and just condition them. So there's a silicone grease that you can put on these to keep them from cracking. Make sure they're obviously not cracked. This is the filter one. This is the largest one. This takes the longest time, but again, it makes it a little more supple, and it also keeps it from cracking or drying out in the sun. So I like to condition all these and then put it in. So this is the drain. You see that yellow washer on it. So this is the drain of the filter. So I'll put this one in just so it can be filled up. And then, make sure all the pumps, so I have a booster pump. That one has a drain on it. So every pump has at least one. There may be more than one. So you want to make sure that, it works correctly. So there's the next pump over here is my main pump. So you see it actually has two holes. So there were two different drains. So when it's closed, both of these are taken out so that no water collects in there. So again, make sure you put these plugs in there so that the pump can pressurize, and then go through and make sure you understand your valves. This is a heater that I have. You can see it's actually disconnected on there, so make sure the valves aren't letting water come through. And then if you want to bypass, I bypass it right now because I'm going to condition the pool with high chlorine. And then here's the valve that separates the amount water from the underwater from the drain, as well as the skimmers. And so now I'm ready to take off the cover, and so it has these lock, so it has to go around. I found that just taking off a couple of them at a time helps, especially if you have 2 people. It's a lot easier. I'm doing it by myself, and so one thing I found is putting a rope as well on the end helps me pull that long side, especially because this is the widest part. And so you'll see that if I would have taken all of the connectors off, the thing would have fallen into the pool and it'd be really hard. So I found it's easier just to kind of keep it tethered to the sides and then slowly pull them back. But even if you have 2 people, this helps a little bit, or helps me. You can see the water's actually not too bad. I've had this much worse than this. I can actually see the bottom. It's there's a little bit of green. There's a lot more dirt than it looks like, but it's always good when you can see through the water, and it's got bluish kind of green to it. So I'm just finishing pulling the cover all the way off. It gets hard at the end when the water collects in here, but you want to pull this back. You can see the close-up. It's a lot dirtier than it looks from the distance. But again, it's pretty clear. I can actually see the main drain there, so that's good. There's obviously a lot of gunk on the top here, but that's going to be taken care of, as well as any algae or anything else in there. I usually just use a wheelbarrow to take the cover off because I want to lay it out. It's pretty heavy. It's probably like 60 or 70 pounds, but it's easy just to kind of put it out, take it in the yard. And that's why I like to do it in the morning, and I can lay it out and just let the sun dry it off a little bit before I start trying to get any of the dirt or debris that's on there, because it's wet and it's hard to get off when it's like that. So it's easy to let it dry off, and then you can brush it off, blow it off, however you need to cover it before you clean it and wrap it up. And if you have a cover like this, you got to go around and tie all these down, and there's quite a few of them. As you saw how many that had to detach, so you just have to go around and just get all these, so it's not a tripping hazard. But I like to do it by hand, just so I don't over tighten them and ruin, because they're into the concrete, but sometimes they're not really tight in there or really secure. So the first thing I like to do is just go and just kind of skim off the top and just get any of this mess out, so it's not falling in, because some of this falls off the cover into the pool as they're taken off. So it just helps just a little bit less, because you're gonna have to vacuum the ground. It's maybe unnecessary. You can let it sink. But I always like to take initial chemicals. They're usually pretty off, but I kind of get an idea. I'm not going to adjust them yet till I get everything kind of working and the pump working and it's somewhat cleared up. I like to just get an idea. There's usually almost no chlorine, but actually it wasn't too bad. I was surprised. There was 0.5 in there, so that was decent. The pH was off pretty bad here. It's not. It's manageable. I think it was like 8.1, so not great. And I have a list here, just I referenced that I always keep, just so I know. Alkalinity, I think it wasn't too bad. Again, kind of in the middle, or it's actually pretty decent here, just underneath, but within an acceptable range, close, just under 80. And then there's calcium hardness, was almost nothing. I think some of my chemicals were old, or my testing reagents, so I went and got some new ones. But at this point, I just have a good idea what I'm going to have to do, so I like to then start taking everything out. So you see, this is a flotation. I keep calling it flotation, but it's going to float when it comes out. But it just keeps the inside of the skimmer from cracking, so it's flexible. And I like to take out all of the stoppers for the ports that are inside, so you can see the air started coming out, so it was closed correctly. Because there was air trapped in there, so there shouldn't have been any air or water sitting inside that could have frozen and broke. So I like to just go through and just take all of these out. The main pump needs a basket, so I make sure that's in place. So again, I'm just going through and making sure everything's in place, ready before I start up the pump and that. And then I get my vacuum ready. So this is what you can use a separate vacuum. I like to use this vacuum that connects to a port like that, and then you put it on top of the skimmer basket, and then you can get a good. You can just vacuum it directly into the basket, and you get a good suction using the existing equipment. So turn it on, make sure the pump works, make sure that the valve's closed so that I can see the pressure. The pump lit up. So everything seemed to be ready. So I start it and then just check it out just to see if it starts pulling in some water. I had primed this and poured like a bucket of water in there just so it would be happy, so it's not running dry. And I can see, it may be hard to see, but you can see some water coming in that valve right away. So that's a good sign that it's starting off. It got some decent suction starting. So you just kind of watch this for a while, let it run through. Just keep monitoring, looking at, is it pressurized? There's still air in there, and it's not, the water's not all the way in, so there's no pressure. So I easily kind of go back and forth, watching the filter, the pressure valve on there, looking at the pump to see what's, how much water is coming in. Is there water? Look for some air bubbles over there. Kind of walk back and forth. I'm starting to see some water coming out of the multi-port valve, so that's good. So I know there's pressure. Starting to see, looking at the skimmer, I'm starting to see a little bit of motion, so I know there's some suction that way. So it's all good signs so far. Seeing a little more suction, seeing air get pushed out the return, so that's good. So I know there's some continuous flow of water or some pressurization. So all good signs so far. Like I said, I like to just go start checking all the skimmers, make sure nothing's running dry, no problems, nothing obviously going bad. So I go and I just, like I said, double check the pressure. It's coming out a little bit, but not if you ever open it. That's a lot higher pressure than that. And I'm about to start vacuuming, so I want to put DE into the filter just because there's going to be a lot of gunk going through here, and just a lot of dirt in the pool generally. So if you have you're vacuuming, this one, like I said, just suctions down onto the skimmer, and then I could just vacuum, and you can see just start. It's a lot to do, but you just have to vacuum the entire floor. So you're trying to get the dirt, any large pieces, anything off, whatever the vacuum can take. And I usually like to divert all the water over to one skimmer, block the other one off, no vent or drain in the main, just so I can have the full amount of suction. And then every once in a while you can feel the suction kind of going down if you're using this type of vacuum. So I'll turn it off, redirect so that just so I can get the basket out, go back over to it, and turn it back on, and then so it keeps it in there. And you can see this one, I left it till it's full, so it's all little pieces of leaves, dirt, twigs like that. And I usually go through at least 2 or 3 iterations of this. It's just a lot on the bottom, and then sometimes I like to go check the main pump just to make sure. So it looks like someone got through here. This one isn't too bad. I probably didn't need to clean it out, but just clean it out while I had it open here, just to get the most suction possible, and then just go through and vacuum everything, all the ground. And then you can see it's pretty obvious, especially when it's dirty like this, what needs to be done. Usually only have to do this once. Sometimes if it's really dirty, I might have to do it a second time later on. But after I finish that, I like to go through and just start kind of cleaning around any of the dirt on the skimmers, any of the outside, not the patio or the concrete yet, but I like to do that. You can see how much is in here. There was I think this time I did 3 baskets of it, so it was quite a bit. And then since it's going pretty good, I just like to, I knew the pH was high, so I was just going to throw that in since the pump's running and the water's moving. I just kind of estimating it here. Like I said, there's a lot of junk in the pool, so it's going to be kind of hard to get everything stabilized, but getting the pH close is the best. I'm obviously making a mess here that I wouldn't normally do. There's a lot of phosphates usually left over. That's what's making it all cloudy. So I use this based on the number or amount in there, throw a couple in there, and then I start throwing the tabs in there just so I have a constant chlorine with some stabilizer, and then I'm going to shock it just to kill a lot of this algae and start clearing it up. So I have a lot of this powdered chlorine that I use. So I like to just do it around the sides. It's the same way I do it when I'm closing, is just to have some in the area. The pump is going to start washing it all around. But then I like to put in algaecide and clarifier since there's algae in here, just to start clearing things up. You can see actually if you compare it to the beginning of the video, it's already starting clearing some of the algae, some of just the recirculating, vacuuming the floor. All of it's taking a pretty good toll on the making it blue. And I just like to start going through and brushing, getting some of the dirt off the stairs, off the tile. Actually, if you see some of my other videos, you'll see that I started opening the pool, and then I had a couple issues. I had some tiles falling off I had to fix. My booster pump, there was a break underwater, the ground, so I actually had to take a break after this. But I got a lot of the work done here, so it helped, and it was got the pool going pretty quickly. So you can see there's still some more onto the surface, but most of that will be taken care of. The skimmer, some of that's fallen in. I could probably skim it again, maybe with a net, but you can see it's getting a lot more clear. It looks a little hazy just because I've started knocking everything up. The filter's running, and I usually like to throw the robot in there if you have a Polaris or whatever, just to kind of start getting everything moving off the ground so nothing's settling, and so the clarifier can work. And then after this, I like to go back and just start double checking, make sure nothing obvious. There's no air coming in where I would think there's a seal. Sometimes you'll see air bubbles coming in here and then coming out the return. I got looks like a good suction here. There's no water, there's no air bubbles in there. It's got a pretty constant. Not seeing any great big leaks here. I think this one was a little bit. I went back and tightened it up. Just again, no obvious leaks anywhere. All the valves are what I expected them, or where I expected them to be. I think this one was a little bit loose. Yeah, I noticed I could tighten it up a little bit. Now I like to go back. I think this was actually the next day, and I just started rechecking the chemicals just to see how they were, to see what else I needed to add. So just kind of basic. Do the chlorine first. Is a little bit higher. I probably shocked it a little bit more. The pH slightly high, but actually acceptable range. Alkalinity looks good. I keep my checklist here. It's within 80 to 120. Added some calcium hardness. That's back within range, so everything's kind of coming into its own here. It looks starting to look good. Cyanuric acid was pretty good, a little bit low, but it's within range. And you can see this was a few days later. It was actually a week later because I had to do all those other fixes. And the robot run is actually after I had to fix the pipe. But it was actually pretty blue within 2 days. Once you put the clarifier and plenty of shock in there, you see cleans up pretty good. So this is how I open the pool and get it running. Like I said, it's pretty easy if you do it a couple times and just kind of follow those general steps of what needs to be cleaned when.